Hi, and welcome to the second video in the series Working with cloud-sql. In this video, I will explain in more detail how you can use the MySQL client to securely connect to a cloud-sql instance. In the previous video, I showed you how you can set up a cloud-sql instance that allows only SSL connections. In this video, I will show you how you can connect securely even when the instance is not explicitly disallowing insecure connections. For the purpose of this video, I've already set up two cloud-sql instances, cloud-sql-insecure and cloud-sql-secure. The insecure instance allows unencrypted connections, while the secure instance will deny access if traffic is not encrypted. If you want to know more about how I set up these cloud-sql instances, I recommend that you have a look at the previous video in this series. With that said, let's dive right in. When connecting to a cloud-sql instance using the MySQL client, you need to provide the IP address of that instance. We can get this IP address through the Google Cloud Console, as shown in the previous video, but in this video I wanted to show you a different approach using the Google Cloud command line tool gcloud. If you don't have the gcloud command line installed yet, there is a link to the installation guide in the comments down below. To see the IP address of an instance, we can use the cloud-sql-insecure command with a format flag to extract the IP address. We enter gcloud SQL instances describe, followed by the instance name, cloud-sql-insecure, followed by the project flag to specify the project in which we created the instance. And finally, we add the format specifier to extract the IP address. We use the value extraction mechanism to extract the raw value. And we want to get from the list of IP addresses, we want to filter on IP addresses that are of type primary. We want to extract from that output the IP address property. And finally, we want to flatten the list that we get into a single result. Now that we have the IP address of the cloud-sql-insecure instance, let's show that unencrypted connections are allowed by running the following MySQL command. MySQL-h with the IP address of the cloud-sql instance, -u root -p -SSL mode equals disabled. Let's enter the root user password. And as you can see, a MySQL session is successfully established. Let's run the status command to confirm that SSL is not in use. And as you can see on the fourth line, it displays that SSL is indeed not in use. Let's exit the MySQL session. And let's try something else. Without an SSL mode specified, recent versions of the MySQL client use preferred mode, which tries to establish an encrypted connection, but falls back to the unencrypted connection if the server doesn't have SSL configured. We can validate that this works by removing the SSL mode flag. So let's go back to our previous command, remove the SSL mode flag, try to establish a session again, and as you can see, this still works. Let's now use the status command to see if SSL is being used. And as you can see, a cipher is currently in use, which indicates that SSL is operational and our connection is encrypted. Let's exit the MySQL session again. Even though by default in recent versions, MySQL runs with preferred mode, it's still in a lot of cases better to set the SSL mode to required to make the connection fail if no encrypted connection can be established. Since cloud-sql should always have SSL enabled, this will not have any noticeable impact. We can apply one more change to our MySQL command to make things more secure. At the moment, we are not validating that the server we are communicating with is the actual cloud-sql instance that we configured in Google Cloud. To prevent a man-in-the-middle attack, we should download the server's certificate file. This will allow us to confirm that the server we are connecting to is the cloud-sql instance that we configured and not a malicious host. We can use the gcloud-sql-instances-describe command to get this certificate. And we provide a format flag that will allow us to get the server CA certificate like this. And let's push this output into a file called serverca.pem. Let's validate that our file was successfully created. And as you can see, the server's certificate is being displayed. Now let's try to connect to our MySQL instance again, but this time let's add the flag SSL-CA and set it to the serverca.pem value. This will switch the SSL mode to verify CA, and it informs the MySQL client that we want to validate the server certificate against our own serverca.pem certificate to make sure that the server is who it is claiming to be. So let's go back to our previous MySQL command. Let's add the SSL-CA flag and set it to server-ca.pem, which is the file we just created. Let's run enter the root user password. And again, a session is successfully established, which indicates to us that now the connection is encrypted, which we can again verify with the status command. And as you can see, that is the case. And in addition, the server certificate has been validated by our client, so we know that we are talking to the cloud-sql instance that we created. Let's now move on and experiment a bit with our cloud-sql-secure instance, which has the allow only SSL connections flag enabled, so that we can see the difference between the insecure instance and the secure instance in the behavior. To connect to our cloud-sql-secure instance, we first need to get the IP address. We can use the gcloud-sql instances describe command as before to obtain it. That returns us the IP address. Let's copy that to our clipboard. And with the IP address on our clipboard, let's try to connect with SSL mode disabled. And as you can see, we are now getting an access denied for our root user because we are not using SSL. In the previous video, I explained that enabling the allow only SSL connections flag not only enforces the use of SSL, but enables mutual TLS or MTLS as well. We can validate this by trying to connect to the server with SSL mode set to required. So let's take the previous command, switch the SSL mode to required. So now we are using an encrypted connection, or we indicate to the client that we want to use an encrypted connection. Enter our root password. And as you can see, we're still getting an access denied because we are using an encrypted connection, but mutual TLS also requires us to provide a client certificate to authenticate ourselves to the server, in addition to the username and password. Before we can connect, we need to generate a client certificate and a client key using the Google Cloud command line tool. So let's type gcloud-sql SSL client certs create. Let's call our certificate test client. We want the key to be output to client-key.pem. We need to specify an instance again, so cloud-sql-secure. And finally, we need to provide a project. And so that generates a client certificate for us. Now the thing is that we've indicated to the command that we wanted to save the private key in a file called client-key.pem, but we don't have the public key on our machine yet. Let's type ls to verify that. So if I type ls to list my directory contents, you can see that we have a private key file and we have a server certificate, which is the server public key, but we don't have the client public key yet. We still need to execute a gcloud command to also get the client certificate or public key, put that in a file as well before we can connect. So let's run gcloud-sql SSL client certs describe. We want to describe our test client certificate. And finally, we provide a format string in order to extract just the value of the certificate from the output. And that we want to put into a file called client-cert.pem. Let's inspect our directory. You can now see that there is also a client cert.pem file. Let's list the content of that file to be sure. That looks good. The next thing that we want to do is we want to use these additional certificates to try and connect to the MySQL server. Let's try to open a MySQL session again. So let's use the previous command as a starting point. We want to keep SSL mode to required for now. And we want to provide SSL cert, put it to client cert.pem. We want to provide an SSL key, put that to client key.pem. And that should be it. So let's execute that, enter our password. And as you can see, we are finally able to establish a session again to MySQL. As explained before, we can still add a layer of security on top by setting the SSL mode to verify CA, or by directly specifying the SSL CA flag so that we can validate the server certificate from the client side as well. The final command should look like this. So let's take the previous command again. Rather than providing an SSL mode, I will provide the SSL CA flag. I will provide server ca.pem. Let's execute that. Enter our password again. Okay, and in this case, I still need to download the server certificate from the cloud-sql-secure server. So let's do that using a cloud-sql-instances describe command. Override the contents of server ca.pem. Let's try to connect again. And we are successfully connected. So this is everything it takes to connect with the MySQL client to the cloud-sql instance in a secure fashion. Of course, there are still other steps that we can take to fully secure our cloud-sql instance, but we are heading in the right direction. The steps in configuration that we went through in today's video are very similar to how you would work with a programming language specific driver. In future videos, we will be simplifying the connection process by using the cloud-sql proxy, and as you will see, the cloud-sql proxy will add another layer of security on top of what we already have, while also still taking care of all the certificate management that you would have to do when connecting directly through the MySQL client or through a programming language specific MySQL driver. We will explore as well the best techniques for connecting to cloud-sql from both Python and from the JVM. That's it for this video. Let me know your feedback in the comments below, and if you want to get notified of future updates, don't forget to subscribe using the bell icon. I hope to see you in one of the next videos.